Okay, this is a reaction video. This is from Passport 2, How Germans Don't Fit into American Stereotypes of Europeans. Now, what Americans think about Europeans is anybody's guess. I mean, we all have our own little beliefs and preconceptions about what Europeans are, how they think, how they react, and just like it goes the other way, how Americans think and how Americans react, what Europeans think of Americans. Now, if you ask me what is a European, I would just simply say somebody who lives over in Europe, someone who was born, lived over in Europe, and raised over in Europe. They have different values, different things that I may have, but they have a lot of similarities too. But that's just mine. But let's see how Germans don't fit into American stereotypes. Please click like, share, and subscribe for Passport 2, and like, share, and subscribe for me. And let's see what this has to offer.
You're a what? You're European? Yeah.
That's probably his Oklahoma accent coming through there because he's from Oklahoma. And if you were to sit down with American, that's not what a typical American would talk about a European, but yeah.
They're always kissing each other, and they got real fancy food they're always eating way too late. And they dress real funny. Just who they are.
I've never had any of those. I know in Spain, 10 o'clock in the evening is generally the time when you guys have your meal. I know I've seen soccer matches start as late as 10, sometimes are as late as 11 o'clock in the evening. But I never really had those stereotypes of Europeans in my head. But yeah.
Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, and along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany and sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. Stereotypes. We all love them when they aren't about us, but we hate them when they are about us.
I don't know. I hate it, but I mean, if the stereotype is correct and it's right on point with who I am, and that's what you think about me, I don't have a problem with that. But if it's not, I just know that's not how I am. Then I'll explain it if you want me to.
Europeans have stereotypes of Americans, and Americans have stereotypes of Europeans. Some may generally be true, but more often than not, they are just completely wrong. In particular, when you try to stereotype an entire continent that is comprised of infinite numbers of cultures like Europe is, you are bound to get almost everything wrong. For example, after living in Germany for 2.5 years, I have observed many ways in which Germans are not stereotypical Europeans, at least from an American perspective of overly generalized European stereotypes. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today in our video. Prominent in the continent, but inconsistent with the sentiment. So Americans definitely have specific stereotypes or ideas of specific European countries, and we do distinguish between them in many ways. For example, we know that a Greek and a German are exact opposites of each other. However, that doesn't stop us from making overarching broad generalizations of Europeans compared to the US that seem to more or less hold true in our heads. And Europeans definitely do this of the US as well. Europeans often distinguish stereotypes of Americans from the North and Americans from the South, but they still have their overarching stereotypes of the US as a whole that somewhat may hold true, although I, as an American from the South, might contest this because of our in-country rivalries with, say, California or with the North. So I guess what I'm trying to establish here at the beginning is we all do this, and we all do a poor job at accurately stereotyping. So for the first way in which Germans do not align with the stereotypical American stereotype of Europeans, when Americans think of Europeans meeting for the first time or for well-established relationships.
And you see this in some of the movies that come from Europe, is that what he's talking about is the kissing, two kisses, things like that, like kiss on a cheek and all that good stuff. I never experienced that from Germany. Nobody ever who I was introduced to didn't give me a kiss or anything like that. But I never really thought that that's what would happen if I did.
Relationship seeing each other again, they often imagine two people leaning in for a kiss, one on one cheek and then the other. This is the epitome of European social culture to Americans, in stark contrast to our handshake and personal space keeping culture. Now, I will put the caveat on that in particular the Midwest or the Southern United States, we do tend to sometimes be less strict about our handshakes and will much more freely hug family, friends, or people we are meeting for the first time, as opposed to some other parts of the US. But the European kissing culture typically does not happen. When we first moved to Europe, I was fully prepared to embrace the new culture we were in, and I assumed a big part of that was going to be kissing greetings. I was very nervous about not knowing the proper procedure of how many kisses to give or which side of the
Again, that was something that I never even thought of or even considered about kissing people when I was over there in Germany. It's just something that never even. Now, if somebody did lean over to want to do that, I would have just obliged. But I never thought about that as something that would happen if I when I was over there.
cheek to start on, but I was still very excited about being thrust into a different culture that meant I had to relearn how to behave in social meetings. However, it didn't take long to realize Germans are not European in this way. Somewhat disappointingly, we quickly learned that Germans are a firm handshake kind of culture and do not have kissing as their main component of greetings and goodbyes. Now, I say somewhat
That's probably why I didn't have to worry about it.
but disappointingly, not because I wanted to kiss a lot of Europeans, and in fact, many of the cultures that greet by kissing don't actually literally kiss, but rather just move in close and make the noise without literally planting one on the other. But because I learned that Germans, for the most part, just do things similar to what I was used to, it wasn't the new and exciting experience that I had imagined interacting with Europeans would be. But I have learned that throughout the rest of Europe, the kissing culture is extremely wide-ranged as to how many kisses are given, how it is given, the types of relationships that are giving kisses, etc. So I would like to know from you guys, if you do this in your culture, how do you do it? And for Germans,
That would be a little, I have to admit, that would be a little bit strange to a lot of people, in my opinion, in the United States if we greeted like that. That's just not something that you do. It's usually it's usually a hug or a handshake is what I have encountered in the United States. But I'm not opposed to the kissing.
how do you handle the difference in culture when you travel to other European countries where you may be put in a situation where this is expected? The median age of the German population in 2022 is only 45.7 years old, which doesn't explain the next way in which Germans do not align with the average stereotype Americans have of Europeans, and that is that Germans eat dinner very early. Yeah, in the US, we often joke about elderly people eating dinner very early and Europeans eating super late at night. Americans have this concept that when Americans are getting ready for bed, this is when Europeans are typically sitting down to eat dinner. It is also pretty common.
Yeah, Spain usually has this belief amongst Americans is that Spain has a late meal. Okay, that 6 o'clock is early for a meal for dinner for Spanish fans. Usually 9 or 10 o'clock is when they have their meal. That's just what Americans think. Now I don't know what German. I really didn't think too much about what Germans when Germans had their meals.
Common to hear a little joke like, well, this is how they do it in Europe. When, for example, an American family has a busy evening and isn't able to eat dinner until like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. However, unlike the stereotype, Germans do not eat late at night, but rather much earlier compared to some of the later dinner eating cultures in Europe like Spain. So no,
I say it here, it comes out there.
Germans don't eat as early as Americans joke that elderly people eat dinner, but they actually share the exact same average dinner time as Americans. The average American actually eats dinner around 6 to 7 p.m. according to Insider.com, and according to StokeTravel.com, Germans also sit down for their evening meals between 6 and
When I was growing up, we usually had our meals around 5 and 6. Between 5 and 6 is usually the time we had our dinner, and I'm not surprised to hear that that's when around the Germans have it. Maybe a little bit later than that, but 5 to 6 is normally when we had it.
7 p.m. Of course, what is early and what is late is all relative, but compare this to countries like Spain or Portugal, where dinner times do typically reinforce the American perception of incredibly late dinner times, where they typically eat around 9 or 10 p.m. Yeah, Germans eat pretty early. When a European imagines the epitome of an American, they will generally imagine someone dressed extremely casually and maybe even a little bit slobbish. On the flip side, when an American imagines a stereotypical European, they imagine, well, actually something exactly like we shared on a
Well, what Europeans wear. Look, here's the thought about Europeans that I've always had, and Europeans in general, is that they dress the same way as we do. Okay, they don't dress too differently. Now, we don't generally dress like the slob or the cutoff shirt. None of that. There are people who do that, but a lot of people dress basically like I am. Okay, t-shirt and shorts and uh, shoes and socks and all and that sort of thing. We just dress very casually. Now, the only other big difference is, and he's talked about this in a previous video, is the feeling about nudity. I don't know if he talks about it in this video. Is if I go to a European beach with a girl, it's more likely she's going to take off her top than an American would. If we went to an American beach, nobody takes off their top. In Europe, they do. Okay, that's the kind of thing that we think about from European. The other thing is, which I found out is like a lot of times you don't get ice in your Coke. You don't get free refills, things like that. But there's not a whole lot as far as how they dress. I've never really looked at how Europeans dress or Germans dress for that matter as anything different from people in the United States. And I mean, again, Americans don't always dress like the cutoff shirt and dress like that. We generally dress pretty casual, like shirt, shorts, or jeans, and tennis shoes.
Story on our Instagram last year. Someone sipping an espresso, taking life slow, and dressed to impress. Well, I hate to break it to you, but when Americans imagine a well-dressed and bespoke European, they are not thinking of a German because Germans are absolutely not known for their fashion sense, much like their American counterparts. To be fair, Germans won't typically be found walking around in oversized event t-shirts, baseball caps, leggings, and tennis shoes like Americans. However, they still make plenty of their own
But not every American would dress like that either.
fashion faux pas and are not known by their neighboring countries as
Some do, though. But
one to look up to for fashion advice. German fashion very much aligns with the generalized German outlook on life, and that being one of practicality. Germans dress for comfort, to suit the activity they're taking part in, and love some good outdoor gear. They will try and deny the socks and sandals claims, but I'm here to tell you that we see it often proudly sported. Now, Germany is sort of in a transitional period where fashion is becoming more and more valued, as we can see with the establishment of the Berlin Fashion Week in July of 2007. But if you are planning a trip to Europe and plan on wearing your cutest European outfits, don't be shocked when you arrive in Germany and see you don't fit in with the casual khaki shorts, Birkenstocks, and Jack Wolfskin jackets. What would a trip to Europe be for Americans without gorging themselves in all kinds of refined and delicious European cuisine? And many might say that they expect the quality of food to be a step up in Europe from the US. After all, if we use Michelin stars as a measuring stick for food, we can see that Europe has an exceedingly higher number of Michelin stars than the US. In fact, France alone has over 3 times more Michelin stars than the US. Italy has almost twice as many as well. Also, if we looked at Michelin-starred restaurants per capita, the US isn't even in the top 15 countries in the world, a list which is primarily comprised of, you guessed it, European countries. However, Germany is not known for their food. Well, at least not known for their fine food.
look, when I went to Germany, I wasn't looking for fine food. I already said I went to a Burger King a couple times when I was over in Germany, and we just went, Kaiser rolls with bratwurst in them, and the breakfast that we had, which had omelets and croissant, and it was absolutely out of this world. I wouldn't say it was astronomically better than the United States version of the same things, but it was very good.
Now, this may confuse you a little because actually, if we look again at our measuring stick of Michelin stars, Germany does have 305 stars compared to the US's 193, indicating that Germany has some incredible food and at a much higher rate than the US still, and therefore the American stereotype of Europeans should hold true for Germany. But if we look at the Michelin Guides website, search for 1, 2, or 3-star restaurants in Germany, and try to filter the cuisine, you will notice there are filters for French food, creative French food, classic French food, Greek, Israeli, Italian, Japanese, and so on, but what's missing?
Or German food.
German food. Now, once again, to be fair, Germany does have Michelin listed restaurants that have not been awarded any stars that fall under the German cuisine category though, but still, German food is far from being known as refined and cultured. In a DW article,
and that's perfectly fine. I had no problem with that. I mean, anybody can sit there and say our food is the greatest in the world and all that good stuff. No, the food was fine when I was in Germany. I had no problem with it. Whenever I went to some place which was German food or mostly German food, it was fantastic.
Article titled German Cuisine, Does It Exist and Can You Enjoy It? The author describes their experiences with German food by saying things like, many countries around the world are famous for their versatile cuisines, but Germany isn't exactly one of them. The author then goes on to describe German food as 50 shades of beige, because many famous German dishes are admittedly just pale. When we have friends ask us about our experiences with German food, I haven't personally used the word beige, although I have always described German food as a big plate of brown. So, same idea. And although
it was still good,
the food has been described in appearance as bland and beige, German food is also somewhat famous for being afraid of spices and bland in taste. With all this being said, it doesn't necessarily fit in the American mental image of refined European cuisine. The same article quoted,
and again, when I talk about fine European cuisine, I generally don't think of Germany. I usually think of France or Italy, but not Germany. But that doesn't mean German's food isn't good, because like I said, I enjoyed when I was over there. I enjoyed it. It tasted great. It tasted very good.
German Michelin 3-star chef Joachim Wissler, who said the DNA of German culinary art is not internally famous, in part because enjoyment is not considered a German virtue, and the German high-level cuisine is completely underestimated in terms of quality and craftsmanship. It is even misunderstood at the international level. Now, all this to say, after living in Germany for a while now, we have learned about how much more diverse German cuisine is across the country than just the stereotypical foods that everybody seems to mention when they talk about Germany.
Yeah, there's the broad on the Kaiser roll that I was talking about. That's fantastic. It's out of this world.
Germany. All this is also not to say that German food isn't good. Speaking just for us, we love German food and love trying the vast array of German food as we travel to different parts of Germany that all have wildly distinct and unique cultures that include their food. German food, although not refined, is hearty, comforting, and still a favorite of mine. To see who made it this far into the video, the random...
Yeah, I look, I have nothing against European, culinary delights, but Germany was fantastic. I had no problem with it at all.
Question of the week is, what do you call the end slice of a loaf of bread? Thanks so much for watching, guys. Be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and we will see you in our next video.
Well, to answer his question, what do I call the end part of a piece of sliced bread? I call it bread. Okay, that's what I call it. But anyway, this is Passport 2, how Germans don't fit into American stereotypes of Europeans. Good video. Please click like, share, and subscribe for Passport 2. And please click like, share, and subscribe for me as well. You have a good rest of your day, and thanks for watching.